Hear ye, everybody. Thank you so much, Slim Fan, for the awesome reaction to my very first video on here, and for all of your messages of support. It means the world to me. You guys are seriously the best people. I adore you for all of the reasons. I'm very sorry that this video is so much later. My second video only is so much later than I intended it to come out. You guys will not believe what happened. So the other day, a couple weeks back when I was going to release the next video, unfortunately I was abducted by aliens and then forced through a portal where I had to slay a dragon, which I did not do because dragon lives matter, and instead we burnt down the whole country and ruled. But then I had to get sent back because I still have kids, so that was that. Told you wouldn't believe me. Anywho, on to the episode. So, in today, we are now going on to the witnesses in the Karen Reed trial. And so, there are a couple of things I want you to keep in mind. One of them is called Hanlon's razor. It is a philosophical idea intended to help you thin down an argument to its most essential points, is how I understand it. Don't quote me. Occam's razor is the more common one. Hanlon's razor is a little less known. So Hanlon's razor is stated as: do not ascribe to malice what can adequately be explained by stupidity, or sometimes by incompetence is used in its place. I love this phrase because I think it's a good way to help make sure you're not jumping to a conspiracy theory when you just have a bunch of dumbasses doing dumbass things. And another statement that I thought was a really good example of this, it's a little bit longer, and it's by Johann Wolfgang van Goethe. Misunderstandings and neglect occasion more mischief in the world than even malice and wickedness. At all events, the two latter are less frequent occurrences. So basically, both of these are like, hey, let's not just jump to, this person is doing wicked and evil things, when it's likely they're just a screw up. And today's episode's gonna have some questionable things. As I kind of foreshadowed in the last episode, talking about solo cups and leaf blowers. We're going to get to that today. So, the next thing I want to talk about is when it comes to these witnesses. There are kind of two types, trustworthy and untrustworthy, at least from my perspective. That's what we're going to be looking at, and that's what the jury is going to need to decide. Is what this person is saying trustworthy or not? They are the finders of fact. It is their determination which determines the truth. Now, that's of course judicial thinking. That's a philosophical idea. Obviously, here in the real world, juries can be wrong, but that is what it is considered as a matter of law. They are the finders of fact. What they determine becomes legally true. So, the way that I have kind of broken this down is the ones that I find trustworthy are the ones that are straightforward when they are getting questioned by the prosecutor, and straightforward when they are getting cross-examined by the defense. There is those who are straightforward with the prosecutor, but as soon as the defense steps up, suddenly they are like dodging questions and parsing little words and quibbling about everything, or hemming and hawing, and you're like, they'll be like, I don't even know what my name is. It's so bad. Some of them get so bad. But we'll get to Jen McCabe in another episode. She is wild. So those are the main two styles. Now, there's a third category of witnesses where they are straightforward on their direct examination, but on cross, the defense said, we have no questions, which the defense is using to indicate that the information that witness put out is accurate from their perspective or not impactful in any way to the truth of the matter. So when we get to the very first witnesses, we see this happen. So the first two witnesses are the O'Keefes, and that is John O'Keefe's brother and his wife, John O'Keefe's sister-in-law. And they were there to humanize John O'Keefe, as well as Erin O'Keefe, the sister-in-law, was there to talk a little bit about a fight, about possible cheating in Aruba that happened over New Year's. Very small, not very impactful testimony, other than to humanize the victim. So, on the third witness, we get to Officer Seraph. Officer Seraph was straightforward on both, and I really, really appreciated this about him, because he got confronted with the first problems. So the very first law enforcement officer, we have problems. Oof, that's rough. He brings in the dispatch report. And on the dispatch report, which is the very first document generated in this entire case, the order that the officers arrive is wrong. The times that the officers arrived are wrong. And the address is wrong. Ouch. On top of that, he got confronted with the fact that right after the incident and the day after with Trooper Proctor, ooh, we'll get into him, he had stated that what he heard from Karen Reed was, is he dead? Then on April 14th, 2022, he's now, this is my fault, I don't know, I can't believe this is happening, is he going to die, is he dead? Which is a lot more than was in the report that was contemporaneous to the incident. Which, as the defense consistently points out, your memory doesn't get better over time, it gets worse. And yet we seem to have miraculous memory syndrome happening with some of these witnesses where their memory always gets better over time. Not suspicious at all, right? Then, on direct examination, it's now, this is all my fault, I did this, is he dead, is he dead? Which wasn't there before. So we're going to kind of zoom through some of these witnesses, because I got a big one at the end, and we're going to hone in on him, alright? We have Patrolman Stephen Mullaney, straightforward on both, states he never heard anything like an admission. Badly handled crime scene is the next thing that he points out. They didn't put up any crime scene tape, didn't secure the scene, and they used a leaf blower. We'll get there closer to the end. Next we have EMT Timothy Null, straightforward on both, gave the condition, talked about how they did EMT stuff, all good. Firefighter Flametti, 99%, he was good. He was doing so good until he gets confronted with the fact that this trial is the first time that he said he directly told doctors and nurses that John O'Keefe was hit by a vehicle, and when confronted by the defense, he gets very dodgy and says, well, I was never asked. I was never asked in any of these other hearings. I was never asked by troopers about whether or not I told medical personnel, because there's no contemporaneous reports. There's nothing from the time of the trial, or not of the trial, from the time of the incident, clearly stating that John O'Keefe was hit by a vehicle. Not medical, not police, nothing. But all of a sudden, everybody's got their "I heard this." We'll discuss a little bit later as to why that might be. Because, once again, don't attribute to malice what can adequately be explained by stupidity or incompetence. Let's not jump to a conspiracy theory until we have enough evidence of the malice to pin that there. 1. Conspiracies tend to be a lot smaller than most people would think. It's better to have fewer numbers of people in on something than it is to have a large group, because people talk. We gossip. Because conspiracies always come apart because people talk. So, I'm more inclined to believe that there are a few people that acted with malice or acted with ill intent, and then there are other people who misremembered things, who heard a story all over and over and over in their head, and now 2 years later, they're misremembering it. That's entirely common. Or they have maybe had a slight push, but they believe it's accurate and true, that maybe what they're saying is 100% accurate, but it goes to the truth of the matter. They don't think that they're lying, they're just kind of pushing a little. So, that would make a lot of sense to me. Misremembering, incompetence, and a little bit of a push on some people, with very few people at the center who are actively, maliciously trying to do something, is more likely to get me convinced that there may be a conspiracy. But I think, at this point, when I work through this whole thing, this goes up to day 5, I don't think we're there yet. But we're still on the prosecution's case, and it's very bad for the prosecution. If we're sitting here all going, I wonder about the conspiracy side of it. That's bad. Because all doubt goes to the defense. That's reasonable doubt. All doubt favors the defense. If you have doubt, it has to go, and it is reasonable, you used your brain, then it has to go to favor the defense. So it is bad that we are sitting here at the beginning of the trial having these thoughts. So, then we have firefighter Matthew Kelly, firefighter Francis Walsh, both very straightforward, both gave basic generic information. Some of them heard Karen Reed say, some of them heard I hit him, but they didn't know who. Other ones heard her, just screaming, "Is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead?" Other ones heard her scream, "Did I hit him? Did I hit him?" So it was a very chaotic scene, and the eyewitnesses' testimony from that time is varying. In fact, it's exactly why you don't want to call a whole lot of witnesses, because a whole lot of witnesses are going to get small things differently. And a woman who was just running around screaming all sorts of things like, "Did I hit? I could have hit him," you're going to get variations on what she said, even if what she said didn't vary a lot. People hear, and they're focused on a lot of other things. They're focused on taking care of securing the scene. Well, maybe not that, but they're focused on taking care of the patient and getting information. So they're not necessarily honed in on her. So then we get to Katie McLaughlin. Now, maybe this is nothing, but I don't know. I'll leave it. Katie McLaughlin she seemed nice and straightforward at first. But her story has also changed. Now she says the defendant told her, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him." There's no contemporaneous reports. There's no noting in the medical file, none of the doctors note of it, none of her notes have it, none of the cops noticed this. But now she's saying it. She says she didn't document it because the police were right there and she assumed they were taking it down. Again, maybe that's true. But we don't know. Because the police didn't document. They didn't have body-worn cameras, so they weren't recording. So we don't know. She could be telling the truth, she could be lying, she could be misremembering, but we don't know because there's no contemporaneous reports in medical, police, or otherwise. It is ridiculous. States that she told Flametti and Nuttall, the previous EMTs, and so they may have misremembered the woman they heard say I did it. They may have misremembered, oh, I heard a female voice, and they're now attributing it to Miss Reed, when in fact it was actually Katie McLaughlin telling them that she heard Miss Reed say that. Human memories are funny. So, again, this is why contemporaneous reports matter. So, yeah. Then she goes on to state, defense goes, do you know a Caitlin Albert? I went to school with a Caitlin Albert. Well, I went to a school with 3,000 people. So, like, you could get me admit I went to school with a lot of people. Except, there are pictures on social media of her arm in arm with Caitlin Albert. Sure, there are a lot of other people in those pictures, but she's still standing up right next to Caitlin Albert. And what have we learned about the Alberts? That they were not thoroughly investigated, and that some sus things may have been happening in that home. And she's choosing the most dodgy answer I can find. Well, I went to school with someone like that. Oh, you also went to the beach with someone named that. You also have your social media accounts linked, which, again, I have social media connections with people I barely know. That doesn't necessarily mean they're besties, but you could have said acquaintances, right? Like, that would have been truthful. I went to school sounds like you maybe went to a few classes and never saw her again. Not that you went to beaches with her. Not that you went to baby showers with her. What? And the defense also gets her to admit that when it comes to the I hit him, she's changed her story. So again, that undercuts her credibility twice. We get firefighter Woodbury straightforward. He introduces the pictures of the harm on John O'Keefe's arm. That harm, to me, looks like puncture wounds. Looks like he got attacked by an animal. I am not a professional. I'm sure somebody with a medical degree can confirm this, what this looks like. But to me, that doesn't look like somebody, it doesn't look like road rash. It doesn't look like drags. It looks like an animal attack. And they point out the discoloration on the torso of his body and make it clear that that is a blood pooling thing that happens with hypothermia. So even though it may look like bruising, the prosecution's witness says it's not. It's hypothermia. So, then we get firefighter Whitley. Again, trustworthy, straightforward on both. Got in that Karen Reed has MS. That's going to impact a lot of things, like how her body processes alcohol, because remember, DUI is one of the charges. We got firefighter Becker, straightforward on both. She said she was told by Karen Reed that she and John had a fight the night before. We don't get a lot of details about this fight. Even if you get into the most recent testimony, it's very vague. There may or may not have been a fight. Nobody seems to know. So, remember, doubt goes to the defense. Then we get Canton Police Officer Lieutenant Gallagher. Ladies and gentlemen, Officer Leafblower has entered the trial. Awesome. This man has been a police officer for 30 years in Massachusetts. Okay? And he has never processed a crime scene in snow. I get climate change is a thing. Okay? It's getting warmer and warmer. Alright? However, it has snowed more than once in 30 years, and you cannot tell me that there has not been a car accident, a domestic violence incident, a murder, a kidnapping, anything at all in 30 years. There wasn't even a guy driving too fast that hit a pole in 30 years. They never had to secure a scene before anybody else stepped in. I understand they don't usually process crime scenes, but they never had to hold the scene until somebody else got there? Never? That is bonkers to me. Now, I don't know if Canton is some microscopic town that's like Stepfordville, where there's just no crime because everybody's robots or whatever, mind controlled, depending on what version. Like, but that sounds ridiculous to me. That sounds absolutely asinine to me. And what's really, really interesting about that is it sounded asinine to the FBI because they are investigating the town of Canton, specifically Michael Proctor, but also the whole department, because of the handling of this case. Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, the FBI is in this trial. I have a page and a half of notes for just this guy. I want you to hear. So let me back this up just real quick and remember something. We need to take a moment to remember what nobody else on that crime scene, police, anybody but Karen Reed, seem to remember, which is that there is a man dead. This is an officer, okay? This is a police officer who's considered a hero, dead, and this is the quality of the investigation. Here's the thing. I don't think police should get special treatment. I don't think anybody should. I think when you are investigating a crime, everybody should get the same treatment. The reality is, though, when a police officer dies, those that investigate go the extra mile. They dot the I's, they cross the T's, they make sure they do everything right so that they get that person, and there's nothing that person can do to get away with what they've done. We know that. So if this is how they're handling a police officer, what are they doing with the other cases in that area? How are massachusetts people being treated if this is the best Canton has to offer? If this is the best Massachusetts State Police have to offer? Yeah, I'm mad. There are children that have been 3 times orphaned that will have to testify against the person that took care of their schooling during COVID, who have nothing to add but will have to testify against her, who have lost their mother, their father, and their beloved uncle. And this is the investigation that they are stuck with. So if Karen Reed did it and she gets off, there's nobody else to try because the investigation is so screwed. And if somebody else did it, we don't know because the investigation was so screwed. There is no justice in this. They took pictures. Those pictures look like the pictures themselves were stoned at the time. There's white, there's black shapes. I couldn't tell you half of what was in those images. They have a video from what's called Sallyport, which is where they have the cars. It's a type of garage in police locations. I don't know. Why am I remembering what the police stations? Bell River, you remembered. Sallyports are a type of garage in police stations. Great. That Sallyport video that they show here is very dark. And you can't quite tell what's happening at all. Like, wow, get some lighting? Did they not turn lights on? Like, it is weird how dark it is. See, this is going to sound paranoid, and I don't want to be paranoid. We want to be looking at this without a paranoid lens. But it does look darkened. It looks like it's not catching the light at all. So maybe it's just that camera. Remember, don't attribute malice what can adequately explained by stupidity. There's a lot. So, the first time this officer who managed the scene, who decided that the Canton police needed to recuse themselves because of a conflict of interest, the first time he's interviewed by anybody, whether it be the trooper that was investigating the case, his partner, whether it was Trooper Proctor, whether it was Butnick, anybody, whether it was the DA, the first time he is interviewed about what he learned about the day of is in April of 2024, over 2 years from when John O'Keefe died. What? Proctor never interviewed him about this case. He never interviewed him about this involvement of the case. Proctor never interviewed him about the recovery of evidence from the scene, like blood and a drinking glass, about where this evidence went and how it made its way back to Canton Police Department. You know, chain of custody. So we can track where everything went, so we can make sure that nobody is tampering with the evidence. I'm sure that won't come up later. Then, not only did Proctor not do that, but neither did Butnick, his partner, until April 2024. Neither did the DA's office. Charges were filed in February of 2022 for intentional homicide. How did they get there when they did not interview Gallagher, who collected so much important evidence using his leaf blower of forensic magic? Officer Gallagher, when interviewed, could not refer to the report he took that day, because he didn't. There are no contemporaneous police reports from him. None whatsoever. No notes that he made on the same day. He didn't write a report until January of 2023. When other officers arrived, he told them where John O'Keefe had been laying out. But he wasn't there when John was taken away, so it was secondhand information. Therefore, he couldn't determine exactly how the body was positioned head to toe. Quote, not precisely. Where his arms and his hands were. He didn't even know until that moment in testifying that John O'Keefe was over 6 feet tall. In fact, when the defense states, well, I'm telling you he was 6 feet tall, I mean, you can take that. And he's like, well, I wouldn't take it from you, but I would if I was told by the prosecutor, Lolly. Well, gosh golly gee whiz, that sort of attitude goes to the idea that they are all against Karen Reed and her defense team. That looks bad. He may have thought it was funny. People may have laughed. But doesn't that kind of feed into the defense's whole they're all against Karen Reed thing? Again, I'm not all the way there yet. But we're kind of getting there, aren't we? Like, we can understand why somebody in her position might feel this way. Agrees that details matter, but made no diagram or in any way chart where anything was found. So we don't know. And the pictures he took, the pictures of where things were found, are literally just snow. They could be anywhere. They could be literally anywhere. It's just snow. There's no indication. There's nothing to measure it by. There's no indication this is from the yard, from here, from there. So how are anybody supposed to reconstruct where things happened, or how they got there, or investigate? We don't know. We don't know. Who needs to investigate? It's just the murder of a police officer. Who's going to be bothered about that, right? On the lawn of another cop. He stated that we don't do that in our office. But he knows how. They just don't do it. He took over, quote, preservation of the crime scene, but he didn't measure, he didn't write a report, he didn't put up a tent. He said he saw no problem with the fact that Sergeant Lank went into the home and took statements from the Alberts, even though the Alberts were friends of Sergeant Lank. And he admits he went in there by himself, though Officer Good may have gone, that part was unclear, alone to get statements. So, not great. Then we get to the fact that the officer who told him where the victim was didn't actually see where the victim was. So that second-hand information is now third-hand information. Great. Nothing's so reliable as a game of telephone, right? Nothing gets lost as each person adds a thing, right? You ever played the game of telephone? It's always perfect. It always starts with the same sentence and ends with the same sentence, right? Right. Glad we're all on the same page. He didn't take any area photos, just the long shots that are blurry and hard to see or make anything out of. Then he went to a neighbor's house, who was also a Canton police officer, and got solo cups from Lieutenant Keller that lives in the area, despite Canton Police Department only being a mile off, where he could have gotten swab containers, but he didn't know if swabbing would be good, so he went with red Solo cups in a Stop and Shop bag after going over the area with a leaf blower, which I would think, being that blower was in the name, it would blow evidence all over the place rather than hold it in specific locations so that it can be determined what happened. But what do I know? Maybe forensic leaf blowing is a technique now taught in schools worldwide. Save me. The cups, the red Solo cups that he got from somebody's house that we have no idea if they were used. It was unclear if they were freshly opened, sterile Solo cups, or previously used Solo cups. Could have been either. We don't know. The those cups weren't sealed in any way. Not sure how you seal a solo cup, but hey, still wasn't done. When asked, 'cause now we get to the house, the home of Boston police officer, an influential man about town, Brian Albert, who's married to the sister of Jen McCabe. I think that's important, because it's really the Albert McCabe clan. You'll see why as we get further in next time. But when asked if he searched the house for anything, he said, "Of course not." I'm sorry, what? If you had a dead police officer on your lawn, do you think the cops would be absolutely meticulous about probable cause? Or do you think that they would spend 5 seconds going to a judge and going, "There was an officer on the lawn, we need a search warrant"? Because I feel like that's all they would need from a judge to get that search warrant. And there are a lot of people, you would think, if that is a police officer, that he would consent to a search if there's nothing to be found. As a police officer, these are his buds. So, yeah, of course, come take a look. They could get consent, and then they could search. Oh, no, but they're going to be sticklers about probable cause. Okay, get a warrant. But his response to this wasn't, at first, "Oh, well, we didn't have probable cause, so we couldn't go in until we got a search warrant." No. His response was, "Of course not." Didn't seek that warrant from the judge. Didn't ask permission from the Alberts. Then he went back to Canton PD, and he and Chief Berkowitz agreed that Canton PD should recuse themselves because Kevin Albert was a cop there. So they recused themselves. Then he went back and did an interview. "But wait, I thought you said they recused themselves." "Oh, yes, they did. But, only from doing some interviews, apparently. And also evidence collection. Because there wasn't actually a conflict of interest, like he said, when it was direct, but just the appearance of a conflict of interest, Because that's different, somehow. Okay. During that interview, where Sergeant Lank and Officer Good talked with the people in the Alberts home, there are no notes. They interviewed Jen McCabe, but it wasn't recorded, no notes, no afterwards writing down what she said, nothing. When Jen McCabe was interviewed, everyone was there. Not separately. They didn't interview them one at a time. They didn't keep the people separate so that they could carefully interview each witness and make sure that they weren't getting their stories all in line. No. They met with them all together. Because that's how that's done. What? This is insane. Then they point out that Brian Higgins would have had access to the Sally port or the car, and as we'll learn shortly, the blood in solo cups was stored. They point out there is no chain of custody report. So there's no chain of custody. No chain of custody at all. A broken chain of custody means you don't know if somebody contaminated anything. You don't know if somebody accidentally or intentionally got access to evidence and then decided they were going to supervillain it and mix it all together just to get somebody framed. You don't know that if you do not have a clear chain of custody. You have no idea what happened to the evidence if you do not have a chain of custody. I'm sorry. I am very mad about this. The incompetence is staggering. Why, in the name of all that is holy, did the prosecution and the DA decide that this is the case they are going to try? I have no idea. They show a video where the taillight is removed from Karen Reed's car. And there is a solid period of time where you can't see what's happening with the taillight. Which is interesting because if it got broken, that might explain how suddenly there were additional pieces being found. And we'll get there later. I promise you in the next episode, that's probably going to be where we're going to, is the fact that they found 42 pieces of taillight. Day after day after day after they kept going back, day after day after day. Not the first time they searched, not with the professional team, but just driving by. Because that's how they use searches, they just drive on by. After the professional team has only found a little bit, they just drive on by and magically find more, because the snow's melting. And I understand. I've been around snow. I understand snow melting, it reveals things. But that's also why when you search, you bring in heaters and melt the snow. Finally, the defense points out that the red Solo cups were put into a Stop and Shop bag, which they do use paper bags, but they don't use used Stop and Shop bags. With evidence, those were in there. They were not stored in a forensically stable or stale environment. Admits it's not a regular evidence bag. He flat out states that those Stop and Shop bags are not what they use to collect evidence normally. So why do it in this case? It's only a downed police officer. Who cares, right? And this Stop and Shop bag with the Solo cups was stored in that Sally port just feet from where the bumper with droplets of blood were found on Karen Reed's car. If you don't have a chain of custody and you have them in that close proximity, how can you assure me that something didn't happen in the 3 days they were left in a high traffic area that caused the blood to get from the unsealed Solo cups and open Stop and Shop bag to the bumper, intentionally or not? How can you guarantee that didn't happen when you don't have a chain of custody? Right? Do not attribute to malice that which can adequately be explained by stupidity. And remember, when there is doubt, like how the blood got onto the back of Karen Reed's bumper, the jury is supposed to favor that doubt towards the defense. We are in, for all intents and purposes on our side, day 5. They are up to day 22 in the actual case, and we're still on the prosecution side. And I don't know, at day 5, how they got to that she was drunk, because everybody says she looks sober, and we'll get to that in the next one. I don't know how we got that she was drunk driving, because they did a retrograde extraction, which we'll get to in the future. I don't know how at all they got to she intentionally hit John O'Keefe with her car. What I know is that it snowed, and that this investigation is nothing but incompetence and stupidity. We'll see as this goes forward if that stupidity and incompetence belies a malice that led to a witch hunt of Karen Reed. I want to thank you guys all very, very much for coming and listening to me rant about my current hyperfixation and special interest. I am so deeply invested in this case. It is a travesty of justice. It is an absolute clown show at this point. It is important to remember that if Karen Reed was not a woman of means, I don't know if we would be here, and I worry that she would be in jail. Despite this, I would like to think that any defense attorney would be able to look at all of this and be like, sorry, but this is nothing but reasonable doubt. But I don't know. So far, the prosecution has not proven their case to me. I invite you to check out channels like Emily D. Baker, Natalie Loyalchick, Runkle of the Bailey, Lawyer You Know, Melanie Little, and Legal Bites are the ones I've been following the most. For their commentary, for their live reporting, if you want to get into this even more. I'm not going to be doing the kind of live reporting where it just zooms through witnesses and I'm going to show you which ones are interesting, but there are plenty of things out there. Be cautious, because there is also a lot of misinformation out there. I would avoid a place like Turtle Boy, because I don't know what's going on with him, but some of it seems kind of questionable. So I would say at least look at it from the view of the jury. Okay? If you're going to follow into this more, look at it from the view of the jury and follow the legal attorneys who know what they're talking about. Or stay here with me and listen to my rants about this, because I am excited to share this with you. This has been wonderful. I love you all very much. Please take care of yourself. Go outside, eat some food, get some rest, touch grass, and we'll be back in the next one.